The lake house stood at the edge of Blackwater Lake, its weathered clapboard siding peeling like dead skin under the weight of decades. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and a persistent mist curled over the water, obscuring the far shore. To Clara, it looked like a place that had been forgotten by time, left to rot in the quiet wilderness of upstate New York. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel, the rental car's tires crunching over the gravel drive as she pulled up to the house. Her phone, useless out here with no signal, lay silent in the passenger seat. "Charming," muttered Jake, her boyfriend, slouched beside her. His tone dripped with sarcasm, his eyes fixed on the sagging porch. "You sure this is the place?" Clara forced a smile, though her stomach churned. "It's exactly what I wanted. Remote, quiet, perfect for a weekend of writing." She was a freelance journalist, chasing a deadline for a feature on rural retreats. The lake house, listed on a budget rental site, had seemed like a steal, too good to be true, perhaps. But Clara was desperate for inspiration, and the price was right. Jake snorted, hauling their bags from the trunk. "Remote's one thing. This place looks like it's auditioning for a horror movie." She ignored him, stepping onto the porch. The boards creaked underfoot, and the front door, painted a faded red, groaned as she turned the key. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the musty odor of neglect. The furniture was dated, floral armchairs, a chipped oak table, but clean enough. A stone fireplace dominated the living room, its hearth cold and dark. Beyond the windows, the lake shimmered faintly through the fog. "Cozy," Clara said, trying to convince herself as much as Jake. "We'll make it work." Jake dropped the bags and wandered to the kitchen, where a single light bulb flickered above the sink. No Wi-Fi, no cell service, and I bet the power cuts out by midnight. "You owe me for this, Clara." She rolled her eyes, but felt a flicker of unease. The house was isolated, miles from the nearest town, and the silence was oppressive. Still, she was here to work, not to overthink. "Let's unpack and get settled. I'll start dinner." As dusk fell, the lake house grew colder. Clara lit a fire, the crackling wood a small comfort against the creeping chill. Jake sprawled on the couch, scrolling through a downloaded ebook on his tablet, while Clara chopped vegetables for a stew. The knife's rhythmic thud against the cutting board was the only sound, until a faint creak came from upstairs. Clara froze, her hand hovering over a carrot. "Did you hear that?" Jake didn't look up. Old houses creak, relax. She nodded, but her pulse quickened. The creak came again, sharper this time, like footsteps on loose floorboards. "Jake, I'm serious. It sounded like—" "Clara, it's nothing." He sighed, setting his tablet down. "Want me to check?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, it's fine. Just old houses, like you said." Dinner was quiet, the stew bland despite her efforts. Afterward, they sat by the fire, the flames casting long shadows across the room. Clara tried to focus on her laptop, outlining her article, but her thoughts kept drifting to the house. The rental listing had been vague, 3 bedrooms, lakefront, rustic charm, but it hadn't mentioned the strange weight in the air, like the house was holding its breath. "Bedtime?" Jake asked, yawning. "I'm beat." Clara glanced at the stairs, their dark ascent barely visible in the dim light. "Yeah, let's go." The bedroom was small, with a lumpy mattress and a single window overlooking the lake. Clara lay awake, listening to Jake's soft snores. The house was silent now, but the silence felt wrong, like a held note stretched too long. She stared at the ceiling, counting cracks in the plaster, until a soft thump broke the quiet. Her breath caught. The sound came from downstairs, deliberate, like something heavy being set down. She nudged Jake, but he mumbled and rolled over. Heart pounding, Clara slipped out of bed, grabbing her phone for its flashlight. The screen glowed faintly, still showing no bars. The stairs creaked under her bare feet as she descended, the air growing colder with each step. In the living room, the fire had died to embers, casting a faint red glow. She swept the flashlight beam across the room, revealing nothing but the same tired furniture. The thump came again, louder, from the kitchen. Clara's mouth went dry. She crept forward, the floor icy against her soles. The kitchen was empty, the sink's drip the only sound. Then her flashlight caught something, a smudge on the counter, dark and wet, like a handprint. She leaned closer, her breath hitching. It wasn't dirt or spilled stew. It looked like blood. "Jake!" she called, her voice sharp in the silence. No answer. She backed away, the flashlight trembling in her grip, and collided with something solid. She spun, stifling a scream, only to find Jake standing behind her, bleary-eyed. "What the hell, Clara?" he grumbled. "It's 2 a.m. "There's something on the counter," she whispered, pointing. But when she aimed the flashlight, the smudge was gone. The counter gleamed, pristine. Jake frowned, rubbing his eyes. "You're seeing things. Come back to bed." She followed him, but sleep wouldn't come. The house felt alive, its walls whispering secrets she couldn't decipher. At dawn, she gave up, slipping downstairs to make coffee. The kitchen was normal, the counter spotless, but the unease lingered. She opened her laptop, determined to work, but her search for local history pulled up an old article from a regional newspaper archive. "Tragedy at Blackwater Lake," the headline read. In 1973, a family of 4, parents and 2 children, had drowned in the lake under mysterious circumstances. The house, then owned by the family, had been abandoned for years before being renovated for rentals. The article mentioned rumors of strange occurrences, lights flickering in the empty house, and locals who swore the lake was cursed. Clara's stomach twisted. She hadn't told Jake about the article. She didn't want to feed his skepticism, but the story gnawed at her. After breakfast, she suggested a walk to clear her head. The lake's surface was glass smooth, the mist thicker than the day before. Jake kicked at pebbles along the shore, oblivious to the oppressive quiet. "Something's off about this place," Clara said, her voice low. "I found an article about a family that died here." Jake stopped, raising an eyebrow. "Died how?" "Drowned. All of them. In the lake." He shrugged. "Tragic, but accidents happen. Doesn't mean the place is haunted." "I didn't say haunted," she snapped, though the word had crossed her mind. "But last night, that noise, the mark on the counter. Clara, you're stressed. You're imagining things." He squeezed her shoulder, but his touch felt dismissive. "Let's just enjoy the weekend, okay?" She nodded, but as they walked back, she noticed something in the water, a shape, pale and indistinct, just below the surface. She blinked, and it was gone. Her heart raced, but she said nothing, not wanting to hear Jake's rationalizations. That afternoon, Clara tried to write, but the words wouldn't come. The house seemed to hum with a low, inaudible frequency, setting her nerves on edge. Jake, bored, decided to explore the attic, ignoring her protests. He returned an hour later, dusty but grinning, holding a small wooden box. "Look at this," he said, setting it on the table. The box was carved with intricate patterns, its lid sealed with a rusted clasp. "Found it behind some old furniture up there." Clara's skin prickled. "Don't open it." "Why not?" Jake laughed, prying at the clasp. "Probably just old photos or something." The clasp gave way with a snap, revealing a bundle of letters tied with twine. a child's rag doll, and a small tarnished locket. The doll's stitched face was stained, one button eye missing, and the locket was engraved with the initials EM. Clara's fingers trembled as she opened the locket, revealing a faded photograph of a young girl, her eyes wide and solemn. "Creepy," Jake said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Wonder who she was." Clara didn't respond. The girl's face felt familiar, though she couldn't place why. She set the locket down, her unease growing. That night, as they ate dinner, the house seemed to close in around them. The lights flickered, and the fire sputtered, casting jagged shadows. Then, from upstairs, came a child's laugh. High, clear, and unmistakable. Jake dropped his fork. "Okay, I heard that." Clara's blood ran cold. "I told you." Before she could finish, the lights went out, plunging the house into darkness. The fire died instantly, as if snuffed by an unseen hand. Clara fumbled for her phone, but the screen wouldn't light. Jake cursed, stumbling toward the kitchen for a flashlight. Then the laugh came again, closer from the hallway. "Stay here," Jake whispered, his voice tight. He grabbed a poker from the fireplace and crept toward the sound. Clara wanted to stop him, but her legs wouldn't move. The air was thick, suffocating, and the temperature plummeted. She heard Jake's footsteps stop, followed by a low, choked gasp. "Jake?" she called, her voice barely a whisper. No answer. The silence was deafening, broken only by the soft drip of the kitchen sink. Then, from the hallway, came a wet, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. Clara's heart hammered as she forced herself to move, grabbing a knife from the counter. The hallway was pitch black, the air heavy with a cloying, metallic scent. "Jake?" she called again, her voice trembling. The dragging sound stopped, replaced by a low, guttural whisper. A child's voice, but distorted, wrong. "Stay with us." Clara's flashlight flickered on, revealing the hallway empty, except for a trail of dark, glistening liquid leading to the stairs. She followed it, her breath shallow, until she reached the second floor. The door to their bedroom was ajar, and inside, Jake lay on the floor, his eyes wide, his chest still. The ragdoll from the box sat beside him, its single eye glinting in the flashlight's beam. Clara screamed, dropping the knife. The air grew heavier, the whisper returning, now joined by others, a chorus of voices circling her. She stumbled back, tripping over something soft. The locket, its chain tangled around her ankle. The girl's face flashed in her mind, and suddenly, she knew. The girl was Elizabeth May, the daughter from the article, one of the family who'd drowned. The voices grew louder, chanting her name. Clara ran, her bare feet slipping on the slick floor. Downstairs, the front door wouldn't budge, the lock jammed. The windows were sealed, the glass cold as ice. The lake outside glowed faintly, as if lit from below, and in its depths she saw them, 4 figures, their faces pale and bloated, their hands reaching. Clara backed away, her breath ragged. The voices were everywhere now, inside her head, urging her to join them. She stumbled into the kitchen, where the wooden box sat open on the table. The letters were scattered, their ink running like tears. One caught her eye, written in a child's scrawl. "The lake takes what it wants. It always will." The house shook, the walls groaning as if alive. Clara's vision blurred, and she saw her, Elizabeth, standing in the corner, her dress dripping, her eyes black voids. "Stay," the girl whispered, her voice echoing in Clara's skull. "The lake is lonely." Clara screamed, clawing at the door, but it was no use. The lake was calling, its pull irresistible. She felt herself moving, her body no longer her own, toward the water. The last thing she saw was Jake's face in the lake's depths, his eyes open, his mouth forming her name. The next morning, the lake house stood silent, the mist thicker than ever. The rental car was gone, the doors locked, the box back in the attic, its contents undisturbed. A new listing appeared online. Charming lake house, perfect for a quiet retreat. No one mentioned the couple who'd vanished, or the whispers that lingered in the air, waiting for the next guests to answer the lake's call. The road to the lake house was a ribbon of gravel that snaked through dense pines, the kind of path that seemed to swallow sound itself. Emma gripped the steering wheel of their rented SUV, her knuckles pale against the black leather. The GPS had lost signal an hour ago, and now they relied on a crumpled map Ryan had found in the glove compartment. "This place better be worth it," Ryan muttered, squinting at the map. His dark hair fell over his forehead, and he pushed it back with a sigh. 2 hours of nothing but trees and dirt roads. Emma forced a smile. "It's supposed to be romantic, secluded, just us." She didn't mention how the idea of seclusion had started to feel less appealing the deeper they drove into the wilderness. The Airbnb listing had promised a cozy lakeside retreat, complete with a private dock and stunning views. The reviews were glowing, 5 stars, all raving about the peace and quiet. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the road, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were driving into a void. "There." Ryan pointed to a faded wooden sign, half hidden by overgrown ferns. "Lakeview Cottage, 1/4 mile." The house emerged from the trees like a specter, its weathered clapboard siding glowing faintly in the twilight. It was a 2-story structure with a sagging porch and tall, narrow windows that stared blankly into the forest. The lake beyond it was a sheet of black glass, reflecting the first stars. Emma parked beside a rusted mailbox and cut the engine. The silence was immediate, heavy, broken only by the distant call of a loon. "Cozy," Ryan said, his tone half teasing, half uncertain. He grabbed their bags from the back, while Emma retrieved the key from a lockbox by the front door. The key was cold, its edges jagged, as if it hadn't been used in years. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and something faintly metallic. The living room was furnished with mismatched antiques, a threadbare sofa, a coffee table scarred with cigarette burns, and a stone fireplace blackened by years of use. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting jittery shadows. Emma shivered. "Let's get a fire going. It's freezing in here." Ryan dropped the bags and headed for the stack of logs by the hearth. "You check out the rest of the place." Emma nodded, though she wasn't eager to wander alone. She moved through the kitchen, cracked linoleum, a fridge that groaned when she opened it, and climbed the creaking stairs to the second floor. The hallway was narrow and dim, with 3 doors. The first led to a bathroom with a clawfoot tub and a mirror, so speckled it distorted her reflection. The second was a small empty bedroom with a mattress on the floor and faded floral wallpaper peeling at the seams. The third door was locked. Emma frowned, rattling the knob. It was an old-fashioned lock, too large for the key she had. She pressed her ear to the wood, half expecting to hear a faint sound, a creak, a whisper. Nothing. Just the house settling, she told herself, though her pulse quickened. "Find anything good?" Ryan's voice from downstairs made her jump. "Just a locked room up here," she called back, retreating to the stairs. "Probably storage." Dinner was pasta from their cooler, eaten at the kitchen table under the hum of the fridge. Ryan seemed more enthusiastic now. animated by the fire and a bottle of red wine. He talked about work, about their plans to move to the city, about anything to fill the silence. But Emma's eyes kept drifting to the windows, where the lake stared back, its surface unbroken, absorbing the darkness. They made love that night in the creaky loft above the living room, the fire's glow barely reaching the bed. Emma tried to lose herself in Ryan's touch, but the house intruded. The groan of floorboards, the wind clawing at the eaves. Afterward, she lay awake, listening to Ryan's soft snores and the faint, rhythmic creaking from somewhere above. It wasn't the wind. It was too steady, like footsteps pacing in the attic. The next morning, fog blanketed the lake, so thick Emma couldn't see the opposite shore. Ryan was already up early, frying eggs in the kitchen. "Sleep okay?" he asked, sliding a plate toward her. "Not really." Emma hesitated, then said, "Did you hear anything last night? Like footsteps?" Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Old houses creak, Em. You're letting this place get to you." She forced a laugh, but the unease lingered. After breakfast, they decided to explore the property. The fog made the forest feel claustrophobic, the trees looming like silent sentinels. The dock was slick with algae, and the rowboat tied to it looked ancient, its hull scarred and stained. "Let's take it out," Ryan said, surprising herself. She wasn't sure why. Maybe she wanted to prove she could face the lake, to confront its stillness. The boat creaked as they climbed in, Ryan rowing, while Emma trailed her fingers in the icy water. The fog swallowed the shore, leaving them adrift in a gray void. "This is creepy as hell," Ryan admitted, his voice low. "Feels like we're in a horror movie." "Don't say that," Emma snapped, sharper than she meant. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see something, a shape in the fog, a hand rising from the water. Nothing. Just the lap of waves against the boat. Back at the house, Emma noticed something odd. A small, rusted hatch in the kitchen floor, half hidden under a rug. She knelt, tugging at the handle. It groaned open, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. A damp, earthy smell wafted up, tinged with something sour. "Ryan?" she called. He appeared, peering over her shoulder. "Basement?" he guessed. "Or a creepy murder dungeon?" Not funny. Emma grabbed a flashlight from her bag and shone it down. The beam caught dirt walls, a packed earth floor, and something glinting in the corner. "I'm going down." "Seriously?" Ryan's voice was uneasy. "What if it's like full of spiders?" "Then you can rescue me." She tried to sound brave as she descended, the ladder creaking under her weight. The air grew colder, thicker, pressing against her skin. At the bottom, she swept the flashlight around. The basement was small, cluttered with junk, rusted tools, a broken chair, a pile of moldy blankets. The glint she'd seen was a glass jar, filled with a murky liquid and something else. She stepped closer, her breath catching. Inside the jar was a tiny, shriveled hand, its fingers curled like claws. Emma screamed, dropping the flashlight. It rolled, casting wild shadows as Ryan scrambled down the ladder. "What? What is it?" he demanded, grabbing her shoulders. She pointed, unable to speak. Ryan picked up the flashlight and aimed it at the jar. His face paled. "Jesus, is that real?" "It's got to be a prop," Emma said, her voice trembling. "Right? Like some sick Halloween decoration?" Ryan didn't answer. He swept the beam around, revealing more jars on a sagging shelf. Each held something grotesque, a cluster of teeth, a coiled intestine, an eyeball staring blankly through the glass. "Let's get out of here," Ryan said, his voice tight. They climbed back up, slamming the hatch shut. Emma shoved the rug over it, as if that could seal away what they'd seen. That night, neither could sleep. They sat by the fire, the wine forgotten, jumping at every creak. "We should leave," Emma said finally. "First thing tomorrow." Ryan nodded. "Yeah, this place is wrong." But leaving wasn't so simple. Around midnight, a storm rolled in, rain lashing the windows and wind howling through the trees. The power flickered, then died, plunging the house into darkness. The fire's glow cast long, twisting shadows that seemed to move when Emma wasn't looking. Then came the knock. It was faint at first, barely audible over the storm. Emma froze, her heart pounding. Ryan heard it too, his eyes wide. "Someone's at the door," he whispered. "Who the hell would be out here?" Emma's voice was barely a breath. The knock came again, louder, deliberate. Ryan grabbed a poker from the fireplace and crept to the door, Emma behind him. He hesitated, then yanked it open. No one was there, just the rain slashing across the porch and the black expanse of the lake beyond. Ryan stepped out, the poker raised, scanning the darkness. "Ryan, come back," Emma hissed. He turned, his face pale. "I thought I saw—" He stopped, shaking his head. "Nothing, just the storm." They locked the door, barricading it with a chair for good measure. But the knocks didn't stop. They came from the walls now, erratic, like someone, or something, trapped inside the house. Emma clutched Ryan's arm, her nails digging into his skin. "It's the wind," he said, but his voice shook. "It's got to be." The knocks grew louder, faster, until they were a frantic drumbeat. Then, abruptly, they stopped. The silence was worse, heavy with anticipation. Emma's eyes darted to the ceiling, where the pacing footsteps had started again, slower now, deliberate. "There's someone up there," she whispered. Ryan's jaw tightened. "Stay here." "No way." She grabbed a kitchen knife, her hand trembling. They climbed the stairs together, the flashlight's beam jerking with every step. The locked door at the end of the hall loomed ahead. The footsteps stopped as they approached, replaced by a faint, wet sound, like something dragging across the floor. Ryan tried the knob. It turned. The door swung open, revealing a room that shouldn't have existed. It was vast, far larger than the house's footprint, its walls slick with moisture and streaked with dark stains. The air was thick, fetid, like a swamp. In the center stood a figure, a woman, her back to them, her long, matted hair dripping onto the floor. She wore a tattered dress, its hem crusted with mud. "Who are you?" Ryan demanded, his voice cracking. The woman didn't move. The wet sound grew louder, and Emma realized it wasn't the floor. It was her breathing, a gurgling rattle. Slowly, she turned. Her face was gone. Where eyes and mouth should have been was a smooth expanse of skin, taut and glistening. Her head tilted, as if listening, and her hands, too long, too thin, reached out, fingers twitching. Emma screamed, stumbling back. Ryan swung the poker, but the woman was already moving, impossibly fast, her body jerking across the room like a spider. She vanished into the shadows, her gurgle fading into a low, mocking laugh. Ryan slammed the door, dragging Emma down the stairs. "We're leaving, now." The storm raged outside, but the house was no longer an option safer. They grabbed their keys and ran for the car, rain soaking them instantly. Emma fumbled with the key fob, but the SUV wouldn't respond. She popped the hood, her flashlight catching glints of severed wires. "Someone cut them," Ryan said, his voice hollow. "We're trapped." Back inside, They barricaded the doors and windows, huddling by the fire. Emma couldn't stop shaking. The image of that faceless woman seared into her mind. "What was she?" she whispered. "I don't know," Ryan admitted, "but we're not alone." The night stretched on, endless. The knocks returned, now accompanied by scratches, like nails raking wood. Shadows flickered at the windows, too fast to be the storm. Emma clutched the knife, her eyes burning with exhaustion. "We need to find out what this place is," she said, "why it's happening." Ryan looked at her, reluctant but resolute. "The basement, that's where we found those jars. Maybe there's something else down there." They moved the rug, opened the hatch, and descended into the flashlight again. The basement seemed different now, colder, the air almost viscous. Emma swept the flashlight over the jars, her stomach lurching at their contents. But there was something new, a small leather-bound book tucked behind the shelf, its cover embossed with a symbol that matched the one on the lockbox. Emma opened it. The pages were handwritten, the ink smudged but legible. It was a journal, dated 1893, belonging to a man named Elias Ward. He wrote of building the lake house for his wife, Abigail, who'd taken ill after a miscarriage. She grew strange, he said, obsessed with the lake, speaking of voices in the water that promised to return her child. Elias found her performing rituals in the basement, offering gifts to something she called the Mother of the Deep. The final entry was a scrawl. "She's not my Abigail anymore. The lake took her, and now it wants me." Emma's hands shook as she read aloud. "He tried to burn the house, but it wouldn't catch. The lake wouldn't let it." Ryan's face was grim. "That woman upstairs, that's Abigail." Before they could process further, the hatch slammed shut above them. The flashlight died, plunging them into darkness so complete it felt like drowning. A wet, gurgling laugh filled the basement, inches from Emma's face. She screamed, dropping the journal. Ryan grabbed her, pulling her toward the ladder, but something cold and slick wrapped around her ankle, yanking her back. She kicked wildly, her knife slashing the air, connecting with something that gave with a sickening squelch. The grip loosened, and Ryan hauled her up the ladder, pounding on the hatch until it gave way. They spilled into the kitchen, gasping. The house was alive now, the walls groaning, the air thick with whispers. The windows showed not rain, but water rising, pressing against the glass, fish-like shapes gliding past. "We need to destroy it," Emma said, her voice hoarse. "Whatever's in that room upstairs, it's the source." Armed with the kerosene lamp and the poker, they climbed the stairs again, the house resisting, the stairs buckling under their feet. The locked door was open now, a black void beyond. Inside, the faceless woman, Abigail, hovered, her body contorted, her limbs too long, too many. The room pulsed, the walls weeping black water. Emma's eyes locked on a small wooden idol in the floor's center of the room, carved with the same symbol as the journals. It throbbed like a heart, its surface slick with blood. "Burn it," Ryan said, splashing kerosene oil from the lamp. Abigail lunged, her fingers clawing Emma's arm, her touch burning like frostbite. Emma screamed, slashing with her knife, the blade sinking into Abigail's arm. The creature recoiled, her gurgling scream splitting the air. Ryan struck a match, tossing it onto the idol. Fire erupted, unnatural and blue, consuming the idol. Abigail shrieked, her body convulsing, her form unraveling into a knot of writhing limbs and glistening flesh. The room shook, the house groaned, and water poured in, icy and black, filling the room. "Run," Ryan yelled, pulling Emma toward the door. They stumbled down the stairs as the house collapsed, walls splintering, the roof caving in. Water surged, chasing them, alive with shapes that weren't human, things with too many eyes, too many mouths. They burst outside, the lake itself rising, a tidal surge of black water that reeked of decay. They ran for the forest, branches tearing at their skin, the ground trembling. Behind them, the lake house sank, swallowed by the lake, its windows glowing briefly before vanishing into the depths. They didn't stop running until dawn, when they reached a gas station on a highway's edge. The attendant, an old man with rheumy eyes, took one look at their soaked, bloodied clothes and called the police. Emma and Ryan said little as they waited, wrapped in blankets, sipping burnt coffee. The authorities found no trace of the lake house, only a stretch of empty shore where the lake had receded, leaving behind a field of bones, human, animal, and some that didn't belong to either. They never spoke of it again, not to each other, not to anyone. But Emma couldn't sleep without nightmares of a black lake that stretched endlessly and a faceless woman who whispered her name from the water, promising to return. The lake house stood at the edge of Blackthorn Lake, a squat, weathered structure swallowed by the pines that loomed like silent sentinels. Its cedar siding was streaked with moss, and the windows stared out like hollow eyes, reflecting the glassy water that stretched into the fog. To Sarah, it looked less like a vacation home and more like a relic abandoned to time. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel, the gravel crunching under the tires as she parked beside the dock. "Are you sure about this?" her brother Ethan asked from the passenger seat. He was slouched, his hoodie drawn tight, his dark eyes scanning the house with unease. At 19, he was 2 years younger than Sarah, but his skepticism made him seem older. "It's just a weekend," Sarah said, forcing a smile. "Mom and Dad love this place. We owe it to them to check it out." Ethan snorted. "They loved it so much they never came back after that summer." Sarah didn't respond. She couldn't. The memory of their parents' last trip to Blackthorn Lake 8 years ago was a wound that hadn't healed. They'd returned quiet, shaken, refusing to speak of it. Then came the accident 6 months later, a car crash that claimed them both. The lake house had sat empty ever since, its deed passing to Sarah when she turned 21. She'd ignored it until now, driven by a nagging need to understand why her parents had changed after that summer. Their friend Mia, curled in the back seat with a dog-eared horror novel, piped up. "It's creepy as hell, perfect for a spooky getaway." Her enthusiasm was infectious, but Sarah caught the nervous edge in her voice. "Let's just get inside," Sarah said, popping the trunk. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and the lake was unnaturally still, its surface a perfect mirror of the gray sky. No birds sang, no wind stirred the trees. The silence felt like a held breath. The interior of the house was no less foreboding. The furniture was draped in dust sheets, and the air smelled of mildew and something sharper, like old metal. Sarah flicked the light switch, but the bulbs buzzed weakly before plunging them back into gloom. Ethan found a generator in the basement, and after some cursing and a few pulls of the cord, it sputtered to life, casting a sickly yellow glow through the rooms. "Cozy," Mia said, dropping her bag on the sagging couch. She was trying to lighten the mood, but her eyes darted to the windows, where the lake seemed to press against the glass. They spent the afternoon unpacking and exploring. The house was small, 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room with a stone fireplace. A narrow staircase led to an attic, but the door was locked, the key nowhere to be found. Sarah tried not to think about it. Instead, she focused on the photo albums she'd found in a drawer, their pages yellowed and curling, Pictures of her parents smiling on the dock, fishing rods in hand, or laughing by a campfire. But the last few pages were different. The photos were blurry, the lake shrouded in mist, her parents' faces tight with something like fear. "These are weird," Ethan said, peering over her shoulder. "They look wrong." Sarah closed the album. "Let's make dinner. It's getting dark." The night crept in slowly, the fog thickening until the lake vanished entirely. They ate canned chili by the fireplace, the crackling wood the only sound breaking the oppressive quiet. Mia tried to keep things light, telling ghost stories with exaggerated flair. But even she faltered when a low creak echoed from upstairs. "Probably the house settling," Sarah said, though her heart pounded. Ethan stood. "I'm checking it out." "Ethan, don't..." Sarah started, but he was already halfway up the stairs. Mia grabbed her hand, her nails digging in. He returned a minute later, his face pale. "The attic door's open." "What?" Sarah frowned. "It was locked earlier." "I know. I checked it. It's open now." They climbed the stairs together, the air growing colder with each step. The attic door hung ajar, revealing a sliver of darkness beyond. Sarah pushed it open, her flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The attic was cramped, filled with boxes and old furniture, but what caught her eye was a small wooden chest in the corner, its lid carved with strange, spiraling symbols. "Don't touch it," Ethan warned, but Sarah was already kneeling beside it. The symbols seemed to pulse under her gaze, though she told herself it was just the flickering light. She lifted the lid, revealing a leather-bound journal, its pages brittle and stained. "It's Mom's handwriting," Sarah whispered, flipping through it. The entries started innocently, notes about fishing, the weather, the beauty of the lake. But as she read on, the tone shifted. Her mother wrote of sleepless nights, of whispers coming from the water, of shadows moving beneath the surface. The final entry was scrawled in jagged letters. "It knows we're here. It wants us to stay." Sarah's hands trembled as she closed the journal. "What the hell does that mean?" Mia's voice was small. "Maybe we should leave." "No," Sarah said too quickly. "We're not running because of some creepy diary. It's just, Mom was stressed maybe, or sick." Ethan's jaw tightened. Or something was wrong with this place. A sharp crack split the air, like ice breaking. They froze, listening. It came again, louder from the direction of the lake. Sarah grabbed the flashlight and led the way downstairs, her pulse racing. They stepped onto the porch, the fog so thick it felt like wading through smoke. The sound came again, a low, rhythmic thud, like something heavy striking the water. "It's out there," Ethan said, pointing to the dock. The flashlight beam barely penetrated the mist, but Sarah could make out a shape at the edge of the dock. It was tall, humanoid, but wrong. Its limbs too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. It stood motionless, facing the water. Mia whimpered, clutching Sarah's arm. "What is that?" "Stay here," Sarah said, her voice shaking. She took a step forward, the gravel crunching under her boots. The figure didn't move, but the air grew heavier, pressing against her chest. She was halfway to the dock when the figure turned, its face obscured by shadow. A low, guttural sound emanated from it. Not a voice, but something older, like the groan of the earth itself. Sarah stumbled back, her flashlight dropping to the ground. The beam spun wildly, illuminating the figure for a split second. Its face was a void, a black expanse where features should have been. And yet, she felt its gaze, cold and unyielding. "Run!" Ethan shouted, grabbing her arm. They bolted back to the house, slamming the door behind them. Mia was already barricading it with a chair, her face streaked with tears. "What was that?" she sobbed. "I don't know," Sarah said, her mind racing. "But we're not staying to find out. Grab your stuff, we're leaving." They scrambled to gather their bags, but the generator sputtered and died, plunging the house into darkness. The silence was worse now, broken only by their ragged breathing and the faint thudding from the lake, growing louder, closer. Sarah fumbled for her phone, but the screen flickered and died, despite a full battery. "The car," Ethan said. "We need to get to the car." They crept to the front door, Sarah clutching the journal like a lifeline. The fog had seeped into the house, curling around their ankles like tendrils. She opened the door, and her heart sank. The car was gone. Where it had been parked, there was only gravel and a faint shimmer, like heat rising from the ground. "That's impossible," Ethan whispered. The thudding stopped. In its place came a new sound, a soft, wet slithering, like something dragging itself across the dock. Sarah slammed the door shut, her hands shaking so badly she could barely turn the lock. "We need to hide," Mia said, her voice barely audible. "The attic," Sarah said, hating the idea, but seeing no other choice. They climbed the stairs, the slithering sound following, growing louder. The attic door was still open, and they piled inside, barricading it with an old dresser. The air was thick with dust, and the symbols on the chest seemed to glow faintly in the dark. Sarah opened the journal again, desperate for answers. Her mother's words blurred together, but one passage stood out. "The lake is alive. It sees you. It knows your fears. Don't look at it. Don't let it in." Below it was a sketch of the lake, with a dark shape rising from its depths, its form indistinct, but unmistakably wrong. "It's the lake," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "Whatever's out there, it's tied to the lake." Ethan grabbed the journal, flipping to the back. "There's more. Look." He pointed to a list of names, dozens of them, written in different hands. Some were crossed out, others circled. At the bottom were their parents' names, underlined in red. "What does it want?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. Before Sarah could answer, the attic door shuddered. Something heavy slammed against it, again and again, the wood splintering. The slithering sound was louder now, accompanied by a low hum, like a chant in a language none of them knew. Sarah's flashlight flickered, casting wild shadows that seemed to move on their own. "Stay back," Ethan shouted, grabbing a rusted crowbar from a pile of junk. He swung it at the door, but the blows did nothing to stop the onslaught. The dresser slid forward, and the door burst open. The thing that entered wasn't human. It was tall, its body slick and black, like oil, given form. Its limbs bent at impossible angles, and its face, if it had one, was hidden in shadow. The air around it shimmered, and the temperature plummeted, frost forming on the floorboards. It didn't move toward them, but stood there, its presence filling the room with dread. Sarah clutched the journal, her mind racing. Her mother's words echoed, "Don't let it in." She realized it wasn't about the house, it was about them. The thing wanted their fear, their minds, their souls. "Close your eyes," she shouted. "Don't look at it." Mia obeyed, squeezing her eyes shut. But Ethan hesitated, his gaze locked on the creature. His face went slack, his eyes glazing over. "Ethan, no!" Sarah grabbed his arm, shaking him, but he didn't respond. The creature's hum grew louder, and Ethan took a step toward it, the crowbar slipping from his hand. Sarah acted on instinct, She tore a page from the journal and shoved it into Mia's hands. "Read this, out loud, now." Mia's voice trembled as she read her mother's words. "The lake is alive. It sees you. It knows your fears. Don't look at it. Don't let it in." The creature flinched, its form flickering like a bad signal. Sarah joined in, chanting the words, her voice growing stronger. The air grew warmer, the frost melting, and the creature let out a sound like a scream, though it had no mouth. Ethan blinked, stumbling back. What happened?" "Keep reading," Sarah yelled. They chanted in unison, the words becoming a shield. The creature writhed, its form collapsing into itself, until it was nothing but a puddle of black liquid that seeped through the floorboards and vanished. The house was silent again, but the air felt different, lighter, as if a weight had lifted. The fog outside was thinning, revealing the lake, still and glassy once more. "We need to burn it," Sarah said, holding up the journal. "All of it." They stumbled downstairs, their legs weak, and built a fire in the fireplace. Sarah tossed the journal into the flames, watching as the pages curled and blackened. The chest went next, the symbols glowing briefly before crumbling to ash. The house groaned, as if in pain, but the oppressive silence was gone. They didn't wait for dawn. They found the car inexplicably back in its spot, the keys still in the ignition. Sarah drove, her hands steady despite the terror still clawing at her mind. Ethan sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, while Mia clutched her novel in the back, her knuckles white. No one spoke until they were miles away, the lake house a distant speck in the rearview mirror. "What was it?" Ethan finally asked. Sarah didn't answer. She didn't need to. The lake had wanted them, just as it had wanted their parents and countless others before them. The names in the journal, the symbols on the chest, they were part of something ancient, something hungry. And though they'd escaped, Sarah knew the lake was still there, waiting, its surface calm, but never truly still. They never returned to Blackthorn Lake. The house was sold to a developer who planned to tear it down, though Sarah doubted they'd succeed. Some things couldn't be destroyed, only avoided. She kept one thing from that night, a single photo from the album, showing her parents on the dock, smiling but haunted. She didn't know why she kept it, only that letting it go felt like letting the lake win. Years later, Sarah would wake from nightmares of the lake, its surface rippling with whispers of her name. She'd check the locks, draw the curtains, and tell herself it was over. But deep down, she knew the truth. The lake never forgot, and it was patient,